So I'm delighted to introduce Talita Ferreira for this interview. Talita has a passion to help analytical minds to unlock their leadership and team potential. And she is the first ever the Management Shift accredited coach with our brand new program, which is completely done online. And so she has just completed the program, and I just wanted to talk to her about her experiences. So thank you, Talita, for joining me for this interview today. Would you like to start by giving us a bit of information about your background and pre-certification coaching practice?
Thank you so much, Vladka. It's a real honor to be here with you. I'm a long-standing C-suite executive, if you want to call it that, in two main industries, automotive and financial services. And I suppose one of my big USPs is that I was both a chief financial officer and a chief people officer. And I just want to pick up some relevant bits that are really relevant to coaching. So I thought I'd tell you a little story. The first managing director that I worked for as a CFO and chief people officer, he called me in and said, you have big shoes to fill. And, this whole people leadership thing, the leadership of HR, I don't think I'll leave that with you for very long, because I think you'll be doing that a bit like a controller. And to be honest, that was a little bit like a red rag to a bull, because you can't say this is part of your title and then immediately say, but you won't do a very good job of it. And to be honest, he said it really politely in a very nice way, but I received it exactly the way that I spoke about it now. And I suppose that's really, really an important thing, because it put me on this journey of trying to understand what really motivates people, what drives people, what is important in a human resources department, how do we create really good leadership programs that move the needle, take people forward, create great leaders, and change programs, and all of those things that traditionally a CFO would not spend a lot of time on. And why it is so defining for me in my career is it really helped me to understand that I am these two perfect halves of a whole. And the analytical minded, strategic, risk orientated finance director, and now I'm a chair of audit as well. And then this other part that's really about the people, how we motivate, how we engage, and how we drive people. And what I suppose I've learned so much about is that actually that second part, that more softer skilled, intangible part, is the part that drove success far more. And that's why I'm so passionate in helping analytical minds to understand the power of that. So I would say that that's kind of the first place where really, why did I ever go on this journey of being a very successful executive in a very large organization like BMW? I was in their top 300 group. Why did I then migrate to become a consultant? And obviously that passion for leadership, for change, for bringing out those other parts of leaders was so strong in me that I decided I wanted to make that what I was working on permanently. And one of the first things that I did after I left corporate life was to accredit with you in terms of the 6-box leadership organizational diagnostic, which is at the organizational level. And I think at the time when I did the self-assessment, because I did the self-assessment that we coach now in terms of this practice here, I did that assessment and I saw really the insights of what it can bring you, that approach towards the individual and the individual within the system. And so when you started to offer this online, it was just the absolute next, let's say, progression for me to do also the individual shift and understand the individual shift.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing this. It all starts with individuals and with leaders spreading the biggest ripples, and then it spreads throughout the organization. Thank you. I also wanted to ask you, Was there a pattern to coachees or your clients that you chose for the certification? And did you have any insights in this regard?
So because I work a lot with analytical professionals, I think the one red thread between all my three coachees was the analytical mind. So one was a CFO, one was a CEO, and one was a very high potential next step director level. And all three of them were quite strong in their analytical minds. And I think the beauty, so my insight was the management shift individual approach is a framework that really helps them to get to insights really quickly. Because it's very much also about emotions, language patterns, it provides that how-to framework of how to do it. And I've often said to you, Vladka, that you have that how-to approach. And I think both for the organizational shift and the individual shift, it's a framework that's easily understandable and digestible for people. So if you have individuals who maybe are not so sure about coaching, it's a framework that really provides an opportunity for further discussion, for further insights, but in a very tangible way.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. And what did you notice from using the management shift approach with your clients that really stood out for you?
So one thing that stood out for me is the accelerated results. So I've spoken about how my coaching clients were really quite analytical in their approach, even though some of them were CFOs and one is a lot more than just a general CFO because of being involved with the entire back office. But the reality is that the self-awareness that they gained came extremely quickly from looking at the framework. One of the other insights that really came to them, I would say in a very rapid, accelerated way, was the impact that you as an individual have on others and then on the holistic system. Because I think that's sometimes something that we underestimate. You know, we sometimes say we change one analytical mind at a time. It's really like that. If you bring the right type of insights to the individual and they see how that can impact their team, it really helps to change the culture and the shift in the organization at a holistic level. So I think that relationship between the leader and the individual and the impact of language, of emotions, of how you show up was far more pronounced. So it helped them to go through those understandings and shifts far quicker. And the other thing I think is one thing that, you know, with people that I coach, directors that I mentor, it's sometimes that feeling of maybe I'm not allowed to share emotions, share feelings. But I think the power of the model and the framework is when they see how easy it is to integrate that into language, into behavior, it really becomes easy for them to see how important the emotions actually are. So some of my coaching clients also had breakthroughs on how important the emotional level is for them, for their personal resilience and for how they connect with their teams.
Excellent, thank you. It all starts in the mind. We know from other research how mindset is important, and we designed this program just to help with this shift. Excellent, thank you. What are some of the benefits that you see for not just the individual coaches, but also for the wider organization?
So I think the wider organization, it's there really that multiplication effect. If you have individual leaders who are embracing this potential and then other leaders who are working together. So for instance, if you're a director who has other leaders working for you, the multiplication effect will be far more reaching and you would impact the system far quicker. So I think it's really that's something that really stood out for me in the training as well, that real link between the director level, the leadership level, and then the making the impact on a wider scale, and to use your words to get those ripples out quicker.
Excellent, thank you. Did this new coaching program that you have just completed have any eureka moments for you personally?
Yes, it did. And it's quite interesting because I did the individual self-assessment just as I left corporate life. You allowed me to do it as if I was still in my corporate life and as an entrepreneur. And it was really astounding how your levels of enthusiasm and that unlimited feeling changes when you're constrained by an environment. Because of course, as an entrepreneur and being my own boss, I'm not constrained by anyone else's rules. So that was the very first learning that I had of doing the individual assessment. And then we fast forward 4 years and I'm doing this coaching program now. And it was then interesting also to see in the pandemic how our situation can affect us. So I felt I was far more enthusiastic, unbounded, limitless within that first year compared to where I was now sitting in the pandemic doing that evaluation. So it was a eureka moment for me to see how even my own energy resilience is impacted by what is happening in the world around me. And I always say that once something is more conscious, you can affect it better. So I think for me, that realization was amazing because it was, I can change that. I can change that. As you say, it's the mindset that changes and the intention and the affirmations. So it's easy for me to shift that because I've now seen it. So that was the one eureka moment. And I suppose another eureka moment for me was, I've always been quite intuitive. Ever since I left corporate life, I've been working on increasing my intuition. And my normal process before I have a coaching client is to make my list of, what do I think we're going to do in the session and where are we going to go? And then it's very much relying on my intuition to move the conversation where it needs to go so that it's best for the individual, not really my plan, if I could say it that way. What happened through the certification is somehow I felt like I could do with a far shorter plan. No, I would just have three main areas and I would just explore those and everything would come to me more intuitively. So somehow I feel that going through your program has really heightened my own intuition in terms of my coaching with my clients and doing exactly what they need in the moment.
Excellent, thank you. Would you recommend this program to other coaches and why?
I would definitely recommend it, and I would definitely recommend it, at three type of levels. The first level is really, I would recommend it because of the breakthroughs that it can have for individuals. I think the program and the frameworks and the insights really help to accelerate things for individuals. And so that was one of the things. So one of my other examples is you use a visualization technique, for instance, which I also used a lot myself as an individual. But because my coachees are so analytical, they cannot necessarily visualize in that way. But what happened is I intuitively knew how to take a piece of paper and almost create a visualization for them on a piece of paper. Just by drawing a line in the middle and some boxes on the left and the right. And all of a sudden, I could bring a visualization technique to an analytical mind. So my first thing would be to say, definitely for the individual breakthroughs that can happen for the individuals that you then coach. The second thing is really for your own. And that example that I just gave is an absolutely amazing example in terms of how I used the program that's more enthusiastic, unbounded, unlimited, to bring it back to someone who's more analytical and found the bridge in between. And so I think definitely I would recommend it to coaches as well, because there's so many toolkits, tricks, tools. And if it helps to heighten your own intuition as a coach, which it did for me, it also gives you that opportunity just to know exactly what to do and how to do it to create more value. Because I always knew how to coach people, but I think the breakthroughs for them have been more significant.
Excellent, thank you. And finally, I wanted to ask you, why is coaching such a powerful tool for the post-pandemic world?
Sorry, Vlatka, could I just go back and also say why I believe it's important for leaders?
Yes, please, yeah.
So the third level where I would also recommend this, Vlatka, is if individual leaders want to also do a program like this and do some elements of it where they don't coach people, but they practice. So they
So sorry, there was another background noise. Would you mind just going back to the third reason why would you recommend this and to do with leaders? Thank you.
The third place where I would really recommend this, Vladka, is to leaders who've been leaders for a long time, and maybe they've always been doing things in a certain way, and they're just looking for something different. You know, post-pandemic world, we're all looking for something different to do to unlock more results. And I think one of the things that where this could be really valuable is for individual leaders. They don't coach other clients then, but what they do is they use some of their learnings and use those learnings with some of the individual people they lead. I think there's a huge, an immensely powerful thing to unlock there in potential for an individual leader, from the language patterns, from the emotions, from some of the tools and the toolkit you provide in how they can lead every day, both on an individual level and at a team level.
Excellent, thank you. And finally, I wanted to ask you, do you think that coaching is a powerful tool, and why is coaching such a powerful tool, especially now for the post-pandemic world?
If I just go back to my own examples first, if I may.
Sure.
So the first time that I had a coach was when I was promoted to being a CFO and Chief People Officer. And I was a little bit irritated that I was given a coach, because the head of personnel globally said to me that I take things a bit personally. So, you know, it was kind of like, oh, so they believe there's something wrong with me and I need to be coached. So that was my perception of coaching when I started. And to be very honest, it was totally different. I had an amazing coach. I chose her. And she had been a trainer at one of the workshops where I'd been. And it really gave me someone who could give me different perspectives. So I think if we bring that to the post-pandemic world, it's sometimes extremely lonely at that board level, or as a CFO, or even just as a senior leader, when you feel you can't speak to other people or you can't show any weakness. If it's not an environment where that can be done, then, you know, it can be very lonely. And so that was one of the real insights for me, is that I didn't have to have this burden on my own. I could share it with someone, but that someone could give me different perspectives. And the first coach that I had especially did that at the level where the interaction was with other directors and how I kind of viewed and judged them. And she just brought another way of thinking about that, which I think is also sometimes very powerful, because often in boardrooms we get to loggerheads with other people. And it's how to shift ourselves out of those tricky situations where a coach can really help tremendously. The second time that I had a coach was when I was far more senior, when I'd reached that top 300 level, but also where I was starting to live more that other half of inspiring people more. And she was a very transformational coach that helped me to heighten my intuition. And so I would also say, there's a lot about leading from the inside out, about understanding yourself better, about the impact that you have. And those are things that are difficult to share with family members, with friends, but coaches are people who can really help you to bring that out. And I think the third thing that I would say is, I recently did a session with someone who had a real issue with her energy levels. That's my wording. She was involved with a leader that was really quite nasty, and there was a whole process around it. And she was feeling very low in her confidence and very low in her energy. And coaches are very good also to help with bringing back that resilience, helping people tools, tricks to be more resilient, to be more able to face all these challenges that face us, but to still stay very grounded within ourselves. And to help us reframe situations. And so that's would be, you know, my top three things. It's really that insight from yourself that needs to grow. It's the piece about resilience and being resilient in certain situations. And then also having someone that's like there for you, that's rooting for you, that's your supporter, and where there's absolute zero judgment. because a coach is not there to judge.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
What do you think, Vladka? What do you think the benefits are?
Well, what I think is we designed this program to help coaches to create extraordinary leaders. And when I say extraordinary leaders, it's not just leaders that are very good at what they do and they achieve the results, but I also mean leaders that lead from the head and the heart, leaders that are compassionate as well. And I feel this leadership is the only way that companies can survive and thrive in the post-pandemic world. The old leadership styles will not work, and especially now in this new world that is emerging, the old ways of leading and managing are just crumbling. They're not going to work. So we need leaders that will be humane, that will operate from what I call level 4 and 5 of the managementship framework, with the 5 levels. And this whole program is all about these levels and how do you shift your coachee from level 3 to level 4, where everything changes. So it's about creating leaders that will do good and do well at the same time and make a difference for their teams, for their organization and the wider society. Because all these ripples go from individual to organization and beyond organization boundaries. So the whole point of the program is to help create such leaders and such organizations which will drive this recovery process for humanity in a humane way.
Fantastic. Yes, I think if I just think about most of the leaders that I met throughout my career, I think the biggest shift for them is going to be the shift away from trying to control everything, because it's very easy when everyone is in the office at the same time to feel like you have things under control. I mean, it's a fallacy that you can control things because you can see them, but I think that's how many leaders felt. And this shift now to more working flexibly, working different hours, working different places, I think it's such a positive shift. And I'm almost happy that leaders were forced to let go of that. But I do know that some inhumane companies are still, very much tracking what their people are doing. And I think that's not the way to go. The way is to build the trust, to build those humane organizations where people feel like they can thrive and bring their best, and where leaders don't feel like they need to be checking everything, where they just know that people will perform and bring their best selves because it's an environment and a leadership style that actually facilitates that.
Absolutely, it's the only way to go. And I think that this whole pandemic has accelerated the big shift towards levels 4 and 5, because people can't be micromanaged. So the leaders have to trust that employees will just decide when, where, and how they're going to do their work, but they will just show the results, and they will be given autonomy and flexibility to figure out how they're going to do this work. But last point I want to make is, although this habit of working from home that we have now has brought lots of benefits, we must be mindful that we still need human connection, face-to-face interaction, and whenever that is possible, I think it's important that we keep that as well. So I see us moving in some kind of a hybrid world of work.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with you. I think the hybrid is the way to go. I also think that we need to find ways to create more of those human connections. So I know a lot of people just do normal Zoom, but they don't necessarily use breakout, ask people to brainstorm together. And those are also ways. We can do virtual brainstorming. We can do virtual polls and things like that, where we ask people their opinions. And those are also ways. I totally agree with you. The human touch and feel is something that we all need as humans. That's how we DNA'd. But I think there's also space for places in between. We just need to be more creative, which again brings us to your level 4 and 5.
Yes, excellent. Thank you. Is there any final remark you would like to make, Talita?
So I thoroughly enjoyed doing the certification, both for the individual shift that it brought about in me and my coaching approach, and for the benefits that it had for my 3 coachees. So thank you, Vladka, for the opportunity. It was amazing. I loved every minute of it. And yes, I hope that we can together bring a lot more ripples of change throughout organizations and for individuals.
Thank you, Talita. It is an honor to have you in our team. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vlatka.